I never planned to disappear from my own granddaughter's party, but that's how the night began to tilt. The vineyard lawn had been strung with warm bulbs, the kind that make faces kind and glasses glow. I'd covered everything caterer, music, valet, even the midnight blue satin gown Lena chose after twirling in front of a mirror and asking, "Do I look like I'm stepping into my future?" I said yes and wrote another check. It was supposed to be a celebration, a bright marker before she left for college. A gift not only of money, but of witness. I was there because I'd always been there. The toast started as the sun slid behind the hills. Sabrina said her piece first, polished pleasant, and Lena's best friend followed, all glitter and inside jokes. Then Lena took the mic. Phones rose like a tiny forest. She looked taller than I remembered, pink-cheeked from attention. "Thanks for coming," she said, and turned to our table, "especially family." My chest lifted, then came the tilt. "And my grandma," she added with a wrinkled smile. "She's very enthusiastic. I did tell her we were going for minimalist, not, sparkle." Laughter pricked around the tables. We should probably let her head out before she gives a speech about rotary phones. This time, the laughter landed heavy, real, rolling, relieved laughter as if a cue had been given. My glass nicked my bracelet. Sabrina's mouth bent into a polite crescent that wasn't surprise. No one told Lena to stop. No one reached for my hand. I managed a smile that felt like holding breath underwater and dabbed the corner of my eye with a napkin, pretending it dust. The band smoothed into something upbeat. The night proceeded without me. I slipped toward the side gate. Gravel complained under my heels, the same heels I'd worried might sink into the lawn. In my handbag, a small velvet box shifted. It was my mother's ring pedal, setting small but bright. I had planned to fasten it on Lena's finger after the toasts. Instead, it sat between my wallet and a packet of mints like a weight that would not move. I reached my car and sat hands on the wheel, headlights off. Behind me, the party pulsed music, laughter, clinking glass. In the rear view, the vineyard looked cinematic, as if the scene had been lit for someone else's life. I told myself to breathe, to drive, to cry later. I lowered the window to cool my face. That's when I heard Sabrina unguarded, drifting from the patio where she thought I wasn't there to hear. "Mom always finds a way to make it about her," she said, not angry, bored. Another woman murmured something I couldn't catch. "Let's just keep her out of the money stuff and enjoy the night." The words passed through me like cold wind through wet clothes. I didn't start the car. I simply understood something had snapped in a place I'd been reinforcing for years, shoring up with favors and rides and checks. I had called it love. Maybe it was, but it was also training, teaching them I would accept whatever version of me made things easiest. At home, I didn't turn on the overheads. The kitchen's under-cabinet strip lit the counters in a soft bar of amber. I eased out of the dress, left it draped over a chair like a tired guest. The ring box went on the table. My feet ached the way they always have since Robert passed, and I started moving more than resting. I brewed tea I didn't drink, and stared at the velvet lid as if it might blink. A memory arrived without permission. Lena at 7 Flower everywhere. We'd made cinnamon rolls on a rainy Saturday, and she wore my apron like a cape. "You always have time," she told me, rolling a half moon of dough toward the edge of the counter. "Mom says she has meetings. You have me." Her hair was stuck to her forehead with heat, and when she hugged my waist, I felt a kind of fierce purpose I had no name for. I leaned against the counter now and closed my eyes, trying not to ruin that memory with the evening's laugh track. On the hallway wall hangs a corkboard. I always meant to reorganize snapshots, program stubs, a map from the zoo where Lena once insisted we visit the otters twice. One by one, I slid the pins out, not in anger, in acknowledgement. A curation of a role I no longer intended to audition for. The photos left faint sun shadows, ghost rectangles where they'd been. I placed the stack in a drawer and washed my hands because the thumbtacks left a smell of tin. The velvet box waited. I didn't open it. I only marked the fact that my hands were steady. That steadiness felt new, like a small, practical miracle. The party would keep humming until late. The light strings would be wound onto spools by strangers. I turned off the strip of amber and stood for a moment in the quiet house, listening to nothing, and finally allowed the night to end without me. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. By mid-afternoon, the sky had the flat, pearly shine that makes everything look staged. I pulled up in front of Sabrina's stucco and stone house, the one with the clay tiles she'd called tasteful when I co-signed her refinance. In the passenger's seat sat a cardboard box of leftover decorations, unused centerpieces, gold napkins with a number stamped elegantly in foil, and 3 garlands still curled like sleeping snakes. The box felt heavier than it should have, as if paper could weigh what memory did. I rang the bell, already rehearsing a version of small talk that would keep us from the night before. No answer. A landscaper's truck hummed 3 houses down. A wind chime tinkled somewhere off to the side. I set the box on my hip to free a hand, tried the bell again, then stepped back. Through the cracked kitchen window, voices drifted out as lightly as steam. Sabrina's voice, unmistakable, warm in public parchment dry when unobserved. She'll forget she said clipped practical. She always does. We'll keep her out of the money conversations and let this blow over. Another voice, lower, a man I didn't recognize, murmured something I couldn't catch. Sabrina again, softer now, a performance pared down to the understudy. It only looked like a gift. It was cover for what we needed. Smile and be sweet if she asks. She never asks. I didn't breathe. The box pressed into my ribs. For a moment I imagined walking in, setting the decorations on the island, and letting whatever storm chose to arrive do its work. Instead, I stepped backward into the shadow of the rose bushes and listened to the clink of a glass against stone. I was not the emergency. I was the account. I left the box on the porch, angled so the name tag faced the door, a tidy offering. The walk back to the car felt longer than the walk-up had. I sat shut the door and let the thick silence come down like a theater curtain. If this was a play, they had written my lines for years. I folded the script and slid it beneath the seat. At home, I pulled the accordion folder marked Lena Celebration from the drawer where I keep passports, appliance manuals, and guarantees for things no one guarantees. I'd organized it weeks ago because order had always been my solace. Inside were invoices, email printouts, and clipped receipts arranged by vendor. It felt almost ceremonial to lay them across the kitchen table, each paper squared under the same small lamp that had lit countless school projects and late-night cocoa. I began with the obvious tent rental tableware floral arrangements, the band's deposit. Those were easier to look at the bony expected skeleton of any event. My pen skimmed the numbers, notating dates and amounts with the same calm I used to ice a sheet cake. Halfway in the pattern loosened. A high-end home store with a name that sounds like an Italian poem. A delivery fee from a boutique importer. A tasting menu with a private chef scheduled, paid, and marked not redeemed. A blow-dryer system that costs more than the washer I bought when Robert was still alive. A handbag from a designer I've only ever met in magazine ads while waiting at dentists' offices. None of it looked like Lena's birthday. All of it lived in the folder titled with her name. On one invoice in Sabrina's tidy hand, a note in the memo line, "Need before brunch. Use mom's card." I did not slam anything. I aligned the page corners instead, the way a nurse straightens a sheet before admitting bad news to a room. When the paper lay neat, the fact remained. I opened my laptop and logged into the account Sabrina had suggested we use to keep things simple. The ledger populated lines of transactions in tidy fonts, marching across a winter white background. The expected charges matched my stack caterer florist rentals. But here were others, a spa charge in a desert town 3 hours away the night after the party, a rideshare unusually high for our area posted on the same date, and larger than expected coordination reimbursements that did not, as far as the documents showed, correspond to any outlay I had not already covered. One transfer sat on its own row, self-satisfied, a wire labeled event reimbursement for several $1,000s sent to an account ending in 4 digits I recognized because I had helped open it for Sabrina when she landed her first job. My throat went dry, not with anger, but with that thin clinical air that comes into a room when the diagnosis finally has a name. I printed the statement, then the invoices, then the emails in which I had replied with the cheerful punctuation of someone grateful to be included. I learned long ago that a paper trail is not for the other person, it is for the moment you begin to doubt your own recall. I dated each stack, clipped them cleanly, and wrote in block letters across a fresh tab, evidence. Outside, a delivery van idled and moved on. The ordinary world continued to make its deliveries. I opened the drawer for a highlighter and found instead an old photograph Lena at 7 visor askew, squinting at sunlight she couldn't stop. I put the photo back under the rubber bands. Sentiment had to wait its turn. Banks are always a few degrees cooler than the day requires. The lobby smelled faintly of coffee toner and lemon cleaner. I told the receptionist I needed to speak to someone about a trust account and ongoing controls. She smiled in the way of people trained to smile without committing to anything else and asked for my name. Evelyn Hart, I said. It's a college trust for my granddaughter. I'd like to review access protocols. A man in his early 60s introduced himself as Gerald and led me into an office whose art seemed selected by committee. He pulled up the account on his screen, the bluish light pooling across his keyboard. "The principal is intact," he said after a minute of clicking. "Interest has accrued nicely. There have been no withdrawals outside scheduled disbursements." The exhale left me almost rudely. I had not admitted to myself that I was holding my breath. "Good," I said, and the words sounded like it had weight to carry. He glanced up. "Would you like to make any changes to how funds are accessed?" "Yes," I said. "From now on, any disbursement requires my in-person authorization. No proxies, no emailed signatures, no verbal confirmations." He nodded, fingers already moving. "We can add a standing note customer present with government ID only." "Add it," I said, "and flag the account for any attempts that deviate." "Has anyone attempted access?" I asked, the way one asks if weather will hold for a picnic, knowing an answer might alter the day. Gerald scrolled. "There was a flagged attempt last September. A party presented documents purporting to grant authority. The notary registration didn't match our records. We denied access and logged the incident." "Name?" I asked. He hesitated the way people do when deciding if honesty is kindness. "It's in the file. I can print the log." "Please," I said. He handed me 2 sheets, the kind of printout that leaves little room for story. Date, time, description, outcome. There it was, my daughter's name, stripped of context and adorned with nothing but facts. I ran my finger beneath the line so I wouldn't lose it in the forest of all the other lines that had the decency to be boring. "Would you like to place a hard hold on any power of attorney designations we don't verify with you in person?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "And please attach a note to my profile. The account owner is competent and available. Contact me directly for any questions." On the way out, the automatic door split obediently, and the heat slapped my face the way summer does when you've spent too long in public air. I sat in my car and watched a young couple argue amiably over a PIN code. Their voices were bright with a historical amnesia of people who have not yet had to defend their own names from their own kin. I slid the printouts into the evidence folder and wrote the date in the corner, with a satisfaction that did not feel like pettiness. It felt like finally labeling the box in the attic correctly. Daniel's office stood behind a pharmacy and a plant nursery, as if the premises had been arranged to remind clients of generics and growth. He had managed my retirement since Robert died and had made a point of never talking down to me about anything I did not know. His waiting room smelled faintly of eucalyptus. The chairs were a burgundy leather that cracked in marks like map rivers, and the wall clock ticked with dignified patience. "Evelyn," he said, standing. "Good to see you." "This isn't a social call," I replied, holding out the bank log. He read, eyes narrowing in concentration rather than judgment. "All right," he said after a moment. "Let's pull up your profile." Daniel's fingers worked the keyboard as if it were a mechanical puzzle he'd mastered years ago. "There was an inquiry," he said, tapping a line. "Last September. Someone attempted to file a durable power of attorney claiming to act on your behalf. We flagged it and declined documentation inconsistent language overbroad." "Overbroad," I repeated, letting the syllables make their shape in my mouth. "The legal way to say someone wanted a key to all doors." He turned the monitor slightly so I could see the audit notation, the coded shorthand of a system designed to make decisions that look like neutral weather. "We sent a notice to your registered address that an attempt had been made. Did you receive it?" I did not remember. A year ago was still a fog bank I had operated within because grief has its own humidity. "Perhaps," I said, "but I'm reading it now." "What do you want to do?" Daniel asked, voice level. "Lock every account," I said. "Any movement requires me in a chair across from the person with a screen. No phone approvals, no emailed PDFs, no, just this once. If I get pneumonia and the roof caves in, we'll fix the roof when the fever breaks. He allowed himself the ghost of a smile. I can make that happen with a note that exceptions increase risk. Are you sure? Yes, I said. This is the kind of inconvenience I can afford. Anything else, he asked. I want copies of everything I said. Every flag, every note, every attempted contact. And I want a written statement in my file. I am not transferring authority to anyone. We scheduled signatures. He shook my hand, as if the act of touching my palm could carry a kind of witness. In the parking lot, I looked at the potted rosemary outside the nursery and thought how stubbornly some things cling to their shape no matter how often they're cut. My folder was heavier now, and rightfully so. Paper, once you let it say what it means, gains mass. At home, I slid the newest pages into evidence and wrote a neat script on the inside cover. No more assumptions, only confirmations. Then I closed the folder and set it by the door where you keep something you intend to use again soon. I boiled water. I would actually drink this time, stood by the window while the kettle fussed, and let a single uncomplicated thought arrive. I am not confused. The thought did not make me feel victorious. It made me feel accurate. That would be enough for tonight. Near midnight, the house sounded like it had stopped exhaling. I drew the old laptop from the desk, a dull gray thing I'd barely touched since Robert died, and slid a fingerprint across the trackpad. A sticky note in the drawer held a password in my own careful script, beside a second note that read, Estate Ames Client Login. Sabrina had insisted on that attorney years ago, when I couldn't tell grief from paperwork. She filled forms while I nodded between tears. I typed the credentials bracing for an error, and instead landed inside a portal whose banner still bore my name, Evelyn Mayhart. A search bar. A list of matters. One thread pulsed at the top, POA and health directive status. I opened it and read from the bottom up, because that is how you watch a plan assemble. Months ago, a polite message from Clifford Ames to my daughter. We can schedule cognitive screening with Dr. Levin when you're ready. Best to complete preliminaries before resistance. A later email from Sabrina replied she repeats herself when stressed. I worry she'll stall when we reach finances. Please advise on the window. Window. Not of light, of leverage. I leaned back, letting the screen glow map the creases in my hands. I pictured the bakery receipt that had annoyed him in the email. He'd called it evidence of confusion that I'd asked twice about the cake. I remembered those calls. Not confusion, politeness. Do you prefer lemon curd or almond cream? I had asked to include her. The words on the screen rearranged the memory without my consent. I printed the chain, the headers, the footers, even the polite legal disclaimers that pretend privacy can be stapled. Each page slid into a new manila folder. On the tab, I wrote cognitive tactics. I wouldn't call it decline when decline was not mine. To the packet, I added a receipt copy from the bakery and the date of the call in my daybook. Cross-references matter. The truth should be able to show its work. For 10 minutes, I sat with my hands folded on top of the folder, the way a student might sit before a test, deciding not whether to pass, but whether to proceed. Enough. I texted Marta Quinn, who retired from a law office the year before, and had the rare habit of listening without immediately offering a story of her own. You awake, I wrote. I need eyes on something ugly. The typing dots arrived almost at once. Give me 20 minutes. I'll bring coffee. Marta let herself in with the same gentle knock she's used since we were neighbors decades ago. 3 notes like a child practicing a flute. The gardening gloves were still sticking from her jacket pocket. I pushed the folder forward. She did not skim. She read, jaw ticking at the hinge the way it does when she's separating anger from action. She's laying a runway, Marta said at last, tapping the email where Clifford Ames recommended preemptive screening. Not because you can't manage, but because they want a paper story that says you can't. She turned to the stack from the party. The boutique imports the consultation that never happened, the wire to Sabrina. We start with armor, she said, not war. What does armor look like, I asked. An audit of you, she said. Not your money. Your name. What's in your sole control? What has clauses, Sabrina touched, and where a form could be used to push you somewhere you didn't choose. We opened drawers that had not seen light in years. Deed, title, insurance, health directives. Marta made 3 stacks yours. Maybe compromised review now, and a 4th stack titled Garbage, which she pushed away with relish. These routine updates, she said, marking a paragraph with a sticky. This clause lets a designated care coordinator initiate placement. Who drafted this? Clifford Ames, I said. She snorted. We replace all of it. New directives, new HIPAA releases, new POA naming people you actually trust. And we revoke every scrap she might wave like a flag. Daniel, I said, surprised by my certainty. He is steady. If I need a second you, Marta nodded. We'll inform every office that touches your account's bank brokerage doctor, and we write a short statement you carry. I am competent. Any guardianship petition is contested. Morning made the bank's lobby colder than its marble. Nadia Chen from Fraud Prevention had already printed a file with my name on the cover. Mrs. Hart, she said, both formal and kind, you asked for the September incident log. We also have footage. My stomach pitched not from fear, but from something like stage fright. What if the performance I'd refused to attend was recorded in high definition? Nadia pivoted her monitor. The timestamp read, September 12th, 10:02 a.m. The doors opened, and Sabrina entered, crisp cream blazer sunglasses on her head, the way television women wear intelligence. She smiled at the teller and passed a folder. A signature page flashed my name, my handwriting not mine. When the teller stepped away to verify the notary seal, Sabrina leaned on the counter, feigning concern. Nadia paused the video. When we informed her we needed to contact you directly, she cited an urgent medical reason, early cognitive decline. We declined the request and documented everything. Is this forgery enough to involve the police? I asked. Yes, Nadia said. Attempted financial exploitation. We can prepare a packet for law enforcement. Please prepare it, I said, but hold it. I want to secure the house before I light the fireworks. She printed the log, a chain so meticulously dull that its drama lay in its restraint. No adjectives, only time. That felt right. Let the verbs do the accusing. Amelia Rhodes kept an office behind a dentist and a travel agent. I decided the placement was a mercy relief and distance in a single strip mall. She greeted us with the quiet of someone who has seen families burn down and learned not to fan the flames. Walk me through, she said. We did, from Sabrina's comments at the window to the footage to Clifford Ames's emails about getting ahead legally. Amelia read with a pen uncapped but not moving. When she finished, she capped it and set it down. This is not a misunderstanding, she said. It's strategy, and you are not in the role they wrote. Here's our sequence. She numbered the air with her fingers. 1. Revoke every prior POA and health directive that names your daughter. Today. File notices with each institution. 2. Update your will and beneficiary designations. Remove any gifts that could be construed as expectation. 3. Build something new with your money that is answerable to your values, not their entitlement. Like a scholarship, I said. Amelia smiled with half her mouth. If that's your heart, we can make it irrevocable. Name your trustees. Choose a scope that would have made your mother proud. My mother's name was May, I said. She taught school in a town that forgot how many girls never got a chance. Call it the May Heart Fund. Marta's eyes softened. Perfect. 4. Amelia continued advanced directives. Name Daniel Rusk, primary agent for health decisions. Marta secondary. File HIPAA releases. Write a short letter of intent about your wishes so no one can pretend to guess them later. And 5. A cease and desist to Clifford Ames, advising that any further action on your daughter's behalf relating to capacity will be reported. And the house I asked. Transfer to the fund's protective trust, Amelia said. Let anyone who thinks you're movable discover they can't sell what you no longer personally own. What about practical safety? Marta asked. Between now and the paperwork being final, Amelia slid a typed checklist across the desk. Today, change the locks. Tomorrow, add 2-factor authentication to every financial and email account. Redirect physical mail to a P.O. box. Order certified copies of the revocations for you to carry. Schedule the notary for this afternoon. And travel, I asked. I may leave for a while. Good, Amelia said. Send me your temporary address when you arrive. I'll list it with the clerk for service of process so no one can claim you're missing. I pictured the map of Vermont I'd studied the previous evening, lines of blue water, like seams, a library dot near a lake I could reach on foot. Burlington first, I said, then a rental near a quiet lake. Month to month. I want room to think. Back home, I placed the velvet ring box on the kitchen table and looked at it as if it could answer a question: to whom does love belong when kinship is used as rope? I wrote a new envelope for the May Heart Fun class of the first year. I didn't open the box. I didn't need to see the diamond to know it wasn't a bribe anymore. It would be a beginning for someone who hadn't been taught to trade affection for access. I packed the small suitcase I used for funerals and weddings, the bag that had learned how to carry endings. In it went 3 blouses, 2 cardigans, jeans, wool socks, and the blue scarf Robert bought me at a rest stop because the air conditioner had been too enthusiastic. I paused palm on the fabric and allowed one measured ache, the kind that reminds you tenderness once lived here and left souvenirs. The notary came at 3. She stamped, I signed, Marta witnessed. The rhythm of it calmed me. Press lift sign, breathe. Amelia's office emailed drafts of the will and trust documents. I read every line pencil in hand as if studying a language whose verbs would convict me if misapplied. We confirmed trustees. We drafted the fund's purpose grants for young women with demonstrated work ethic and need. No relation to donor required. Selections made by independent committee. I approved the clause that barred family members from applying. That detail felt less like vengeance than like clarity. By evening, courier envelopes sat on the table addressed to the bank, the brokerage, the clinic Clifford Ames, and to myself, one set to carry in my bag. Marta labeled a large one, House New Locks. We laughed at the obviousness of the title, and I loved that we could laugh at anything. I wrote a final note in my daybook beneath the neat grid of the day's boxes: no more shadow work, everything in daylight. The kettle clicked off. I poured water over tea and watched the swirl of color expand the way a bruise does, and then settle into something drinkable. From the front step, the street looked ordinary: porch lights, a sprinkling system chittering, a cat patrolling a fence line. None of them knew that inside this house, a woman had chosen to become unstealable. I set my alarm for early, printed an itinerary to Burlington, and slid it beside my wallet. The evidence folder rested by the door like a packed parachute. I did not practice the words I would say when I faced Sabrina and Lena. Words would come. Tonight, I needed only this to sleep without checking the locks twice. I turned off the last lamp. The dark didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a curtain that would rise on a set I built myself. I chose the old cafe at the edge of town, the one with mismatched mugs and a bell that rings when the door forgets to hush itself. I arrived early and set 2 white envelopes on the table, each with a name in my neat script: Sabrina and Lena. No bows, no seals, only facts folded. Sabrina came first. Bright hair, bright smile, bright voice. Mom, she cooed as if a documentary crew followed us. Lena slid in moments later, phone in hand, eyes on everything but me. Before we order, I said, let's be clear. I didn't ask you here to repair anything. I pushed the envelopes across the table. These are not gifts, they're explanations. Sabrina opened hers, and the color left her face by degrees. The page began. Effective immediately. All powers previously granted to you are revoked. The rest detailed institutions notified, and access codes changed, notarized stamps anchoring every paragraph. Lena skimmed her own board until she saw the second page. The college trust has been dissolved and reassigned to the May Heart Fund. What is this? Sabrina asked, voice thin. Accuracy, I said. From now on, there will be no pretending about who holds my pen. Lena blinked at me. You can't do that, she said, as if law were a feeling. You promised. I promised to help you grow, I said. You mocked me in a room I paid for, and your mother tried to become me at a bank. I won't fund either habit. Sabrina reached for a roll she knows soft concern lacquered over command. You're not yourself, Mom. We can talk to someone. You've been overwhelmed. I have spoken to people, I said. A banker, an advisor, a lawyer. They were very clear, and so am I. I placed cash for coffee beneath the sugar jar stood and gathered my bag. I'm leaving town tomorrow. Don't follow me with emergencies you invented. They stared as if stage directions had been torn up mid-scene. I nodded to the server, then walked out. Back at the hotel, my phone lit the dark like a stubborn lighthouse. 1 call then, 5, then a stack of voicemails knotted together. The progression was textbook honeyed concern, brittle warning, rehearsed outrage, legal threats delivered without a case. I let each message finish, then saved them to a folder labeled "for the file." Words have weight when you let them sit on paper or in the century on a server. Texts from Marta arrived like clean check marks. POA revocations filed, guardianship language neutralized, cease and desist sent to Clifford Ames. A separate email from Amelia Rhodes carried the formal registration for the May Heart Fund. Its mission line read "for young women with grit and need no entitlement required." Another document confirmed will updates and the removal of familial beneficiaries whose expectation had outpaced their respect. I did not feel triumphant. I felt aligned. At midday, a message from Lena finally pierced the hail. "Grandma? I didn't mean it. I was joking. I need that money. Please don't ruin my plans." I read it twice. She had used the language of emergency she hadn't earned. I typed a reply and then deleted it. I have learned that silence can be a boundary, not a punishment. I forwarded the texts and voicemails to Amelia for the record. Paper, even when it glows, is a witness. By evening, 2 courier envelopes waited for Sabrina on her porch. Inside, notarized confirmations of revoked access. Institutional letters acknowledging receipt. A brief from Amelia citing the bank footage and warning that any further attempt to act on my behalf would be treated as exploitation. I did not copy my return address. There was nothing to return. I unrolled the small map of Vermont from my bag and smoothed it on the desk beside my boarding pass. In the morning, I would trade a house full of echoes for a rental near water and a library where no one knew my birthday. My phone lit once more. Sabrina and I pressed block. Not out of spite, but out of peace. The room settled. I set the evidence folder by the door like luggage you don't check. Tomorrow, I would carry it myself. Tonight at last, the quiet belonged to me. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.